All right. Natalie is a second generation Italian with grandparents coming from Lazio, Abruzzo, and Sicily. She spent the major part of her life living in California and working in the field of information technology. She now lives in Portland and enjoys studying Italian, getting outdoors, and cooking. Natalie's grandmother from Abruzzo would spend the summer with her family when she was a child, so Natalie learned to make the traditional recipes of Abruzzo. She enjoys making these dishes still today. Several years ago, she worked on a project to renovate a family home in a small hill town in Northern Lazio. Natalie keeps close connections with her Italian family in Lazio and Abruzzo and travels to Italy every summer. And with that, I'm so excited to turn this over to Natalie so we can learn all about renovating a home in Italy. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you, Tanya. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. So let me start that up. And so everyone can see the presentation now? Good, okay. All right, I'll go ahead and get started. And thanks so much everyone for joining. It'll take about 30 minutes to go through the slides that I have. And at the end, as Tanya mentioned, we'll do Q&A. So make sure to post any questions that you have in the chat. So I'll start with an overview of the area of Italy where the property is located. And this is the area of the Lazio region in Italy. And after that, I'll share my experience with renovating a home in a medieval Roman hill town. And the end of the presentation, I'll go through some slides of what there is to see in the area. And tonight I'm only able to touch on a small fraction of what there is to see and do, as this area is so rich in history, art, and culture, but I can only give you a small idea of what's actually available in the area to see. To set the stage for what we're going to be talking about, I'll talk about the photos on this page to set the stage for what will follow. So in this picture is the front of the house in the historic center of the town after the reconstruction. On the bottom is a panoramic view of the town. And you can see it sits up on a bluff, a tufa stone outcropping. And this is a very common appearance for towns in this area. On the left is the Ducal Palace. On the right, we have the San Fabiano Church built in the 1200s, and San Fabiano is the patron saint of our town. There's also parts of the wall that surrounds the town that are visible. This is a really typical appearance for the towns in the area and surrounding. This photo on the top right, this is the countryside just below the town along the Via Amarena, which is a Roman road that passes through this part of Italy. So moving down into the presentation. So this slide, I wanted to start with explaining to everyone where Lazio is, because I always tell everyone that I go to Italy and I stay in Lazio, and no one knows where the province of Lazio is, but it's actually the province where Rome is seated. So Italy has 20 regions, and each region is then divided into smaller provinces. And then to give a clear idea of the area I'm going to talk about tonight, here's the map of the region of Lazio. As I mentioned, the Rome is in the center, and it shares a border with Tuscany, Umbria, and then Abruzzo, and then Campania is down below. And there are 5 provinces in Lazio, and each of the provinces is named after the city that is the provincial seat. So we have Latina, Frosinone, Rome, Rieti, and Viterbo. Viterbo is the province that I will mostly be covering in this talk, and the home is located in a small town in this province. Drilling down a little bit more, we have this map that really focuses in on the province of Viterbo, the upper part of Lazio. So in this province, there are 61 towns and villages, and these towns date back to the Etruscan, Roman, and medieval times. And all but one have a castle, fortress, or palace. The area is belongs to the area of Laetutia, and Laetutia is the original Etruscan Empire. Laetutia includes the regions of Tuscany, Umbria, and Lazio, and the Etruscans were an early Italic civilization that predates the Romans. It sits in the Tiber River Valley between the Cimino and Sibillini Mountains. It's also part of the Biodistretta Via Amarena, which is an organization of farmers dedicated to produce organic and heritage food varieties. So there is an excellent authentic food varieties available in this area. The Roman roads of Via Cassia, Aurelia, Flaminia, Amarina, and Francigena pass through this area like bicycle wheel spokes cutting through the region. And then in the picture, you can see this arrow here. This is where our town is located. It's on the border of Lazio and Umbria. It's actually in Lazio in the Viterbo province, but right along the border of Umbria. I also wanted to point out the city of Civita Castellana. This was an important destination for travelers in the 17 and 1800s who were making the grand tour of Europe. The city of Civita Castellana was the last stop before heading into Rome, and the writers Goethe and the painter Corot spent time here in that era. And then moving down a little bit deeper, we'll go talk about the actual town itself, the town of Gallese. Our small town has a population of 3,500 people and located in the province of Viterbo. So it's one of those 61 towns that I mentioned before. The location of our house, it's in the historic center, the medieval historic center, and we looked at the picture before. Here it is again. And this building was built in the 1500s using the large blocks of tufa stones that come from this area. So it's a porous volcanic stone that comes from the quarries in the area. And I mentioned before as well that the town sits on a tufa stone outcropping, so it's raised up. Our front door here, it opens to the main piazza, the central piazza of the town, and I'll show some more pictures of that later on. There's a palace at the end of our street, and it's still inhabited by the descendants of the Altemps family, and they have inhabited since the 1500s. And then important families of the Renaissance lived in the town in the palace. And these are the Colonnas, the Della Roveres, the Borgias, the Orsinis, and the Altemps. And if you watch the Medici or Borgia series on Netflix, you'll hear all of these names and see who all these people are. The location of the town is an hour and 15 minutes from the Rome Fiumicino airport by car. We're located between Florence and Rome, just off the main autostrada, the A1, that goes between Florence and Rome. Our family has occupied the property since the 1800s, and this property is from my maternal side. So my maternal great-grandmother was born in this house. And then looking at these photos, I'll explain what each of these pictures is. So this top left picture is looking out from the town wall. So we have this very lush growth in the gorges below the town. And the area was shaped by waterfalls and rivers that carve through the tufa created by the volcanic flows. So this location here from the top of the town is about a 400-foot drop into the gorge below. It's a pretty spectacular landscape. On the top house, or the top right, we have the front of the house at the ground level and the main entry door. And in this picture is a scene of one of the medieval streets around the corner. Here, the tufa stone is exposed and visible. It hasn't been plastered over yet. Under the plaster of our house, you see the same tufa stone. And then on the bottom left is a picture looking down at the street from our kitchen window from the first floor. And so that would be really what we call the second floor in the US, so the second level of the building. Moving down a little bit further, So here we have a map of a medieval town. This is a very typical view of towns in this area. And so this corresponds to the panoramic view that we saw in the very first slide, the panoramic view of the town that we saw. To the far left is the Duke's Palace. It's only open to the public a few times a year. Unfortunately, it's hard to get to see inside. And then we have the mayor's office, the Comuni, and then the large cathedral. And there are also 5 other churches in the town, 1 in each neighborhood. So even this small town is divided into 6 neighborhoods or quartieri. And also note that there are other noble palaces, but they also are not open to the public. There is also a museum and cultural center, and this is the main space in the town for cultural events and meetings. Originally, there were 11 medieval towers, and today there are 3 of them still standing. There used to be a ring of medieval towers around the town, but now there's only 1 here, 1 here, and then 1 here. You can see the curved irregular streets, very typical of these medieval towns. And the town will take on the shape of the tufa block of stone that it sits on. So our town is actually shaped like a prosciutto. Under the town, there's a system of caves that were inhabited by pre-Roman civilizations. And to give you a perspective of where our house is in this map, it is, it's here right near the cathedral. And it's on the same street that goes to the palace gate, which is here. So I thought that map would give you a good idea of how the town is laid out. So moving down into the next slide, I'll go into the part about the actual renovation project. So when we first started working on this renovation, the home had been unoccupied for many years. The main construction project that we did was to renovate the apartment on the first floor, the Primo piano, which is actually the 2nd level of the building. That floor is actually made up of 3 rooms, and the total size is about 500 square feet. The renovation of this level of the building, it took about 3 months. And most of the work that we did, it was completed in 2015. That was the project to do this floor. And then in 2016, we did some of the other work that needed to be done. And this top right drawing is the one that we got from the geometra. I'll explain what a geometra is. That shows the layout of what would be done before the work was started. The main supporting walls of the building are 2.5 feet thick, and you can see those drawn into the drawing here. And my sister and I worked with the geometra to do this project. A geometra is a special professional role that is only exists in Italy. So we hired this geometra. He's basically a general contractor. And the best way to get a geometra is to get a recommendation. So if you buy a home from a real estate agent in Italy, they would be able to recommend someone to you. So the first thing we had to do was decide on the renovation design and work that would be done. In this case, we had to do everything on this list, and it's really common for in Italy that a property would need to be completely remodeled and modernized. So we had to do the demolition and reconstruction of some of the walls and doors, the electrical and plumbing from scratch, new doors and windows, a new bathroom and kitchen. So the role of the geometra is to create the design and work plan. He also collects all the estimates from the subcontractors, and these estimates are called Preventivo, and then the geometra oversees the work of the contractor or the subcontractors, and he makes sure that all of their work is done to code and to the design. As well, the geometra coordinates with the comune, this town, in permitting and inspection of the work. And the way the geometra is paid is the geometra collects all of the subcontractor estimates, and he charges a percentage of the total cost of labor and material for that, the fee. So about 10 to 15% of the total cost of all labors and material. And then the geometra can also handle processes related to the title of the property. And the title is called a catasto. We had a really good experience with our geometra, and it would have been nearly impossible to do such an extensive renovation if we had had to find and work with each subcontractor independently. One thing to keep in mind in a renovation project is that the Comune can have extensive restrictions on changes to the exterior of the building in the centro storico, or the historical center. So that is something to keep in mind. You can do almost anything that you want on the inside, but it's almost impossible to modify the outside of the building. For example, any changes to the windows and doors. And this is due to the patrimony laws in Italy to protect and preserve Italy's cultural heritage. So the next slide, I mentioned earlier, what is an estimate, a preventivo. So this is a snapshot of one that we got, and it was an estimate for the building materials that we had to purchase. It's very detailed so that we can see exactly what we were paying for. And we got the same kind of estimate, detailed itemized estimate from each person, or each subcontractor and each material supplier. The geometra submits all of the estimates to the Comune with the design and submits the request for the permits to do the work. And then the Comune, the town, inspects the work as it's completed, including the electrical and plumbing work as it is in progress. Once the work is done, the subcontractor sends us a final bill, and the property owner has to pay the subcontractor directly. So legally, the fattura, the bill, must be provided at the end of the work before the contractor is allowed to accept any payment. And this is to make sure that all of the value added tax is calculated and paid to the government. So moving to the next slide, I'll start to go into the actual pictures of the work itself. So we have the front of the house at the street level. So the piano terra, which is the ground floor. On the left side, you can see the original wood door. That was the door to the Magazzino. So which is a storage room on the bottom floor. It looked like the room had been used for animals. In some cases, these lower level rooms were also used for businesses. And a historian told me that up until the 60s and 70s, that these arched doors were entrances to businesses and workshops. So imagine the whole street level, busy with olive presses, grain mills, blacksmiths, and mechanics, as well as different kinds of shops. The drawing was made by a geometra, the drawing of the door was made by the geometra to show how the replacement door would look. And it was custom made to fit the door space. It was made with a metal frame and opaque tempered glass. And here you can see the door, it's open, but you can see it, and then the change here to the top as well. On the left, you can see before and after of the exterior plasterwork. The bottom part is disintegrating from moisture, and a muratore, who is a stone and plaster worker, removed the damaged facing with the jackhammer and replaced it with a moisture-resistant material and paint. You can also see there was some other water damage that had been repaired here, so it also needed to be painted over. And then on the bottom right is the front of the house, showing you can see the new glass door here, the new plaster and paint across the front. This is actually the large wooden door is the entrance to go up to the upper 2 levels of the building. the house is painted one of the colors that is approved for the historic center of the town. So you also have to comply with the paint colors to preserve the look and feel of the medieval historic center. This large wooden door here is the entrance to go up to the upper two levels of the building. And I also wanted to point out that here you see the San Petrini stone, the cobblestone that is typical throughout Italy, that the streets are made of, and then the medieval arch at the end of the street. So this was actually the end of the town at one point before it was expanded out beyond the arch, probably in the 16 or 1700s. So in the next slide, this was actually going inside of that room where the glass door inside of the Magazzino. Inside there was evidence that the room was used for animals because we saw some animal troughs and animal ties at the end of the room. So you can see the very rustic walls and the ceiling beams that were made of tree trunks and hand-cut planks and the damp cement floor. And moisture is a big problem in these buildings because the tufa stone that the town is built on, it conducts water upward away from the water table below. So you really have to have people that know how to work in this type of environment and prevent more moisture damage. So the end result you see in these other, in this picture here, this is how it looked when the workmen were doing all that preparation work to add the impermeable layer and the waterproof paint and wall coverings. In the end result, you see the restored walls, the travertine steps that were added to the entrance, and then the terracotta tile. They also added lights, electrical outlets, and here there's actually a water, access to water for a washer that we installed later. All of the flooring and walls had to be specially reworked to prevent future moisture damage. And so far, it has worked well for the past several years and no more problems with water getting into that room. And then in this picture, you can see the ceiling that was treated and then painted white. So we left the original wood planks and beams that are several hundred years old. And I was really pleased with the way that came out and really added a lot to the room. And then the last photo shows now what the room looks like with furniture. So it's set up as a sitting room on the ground floor. So now we're going to look at the Primo piano, which is the second level of the building, as I mentioned earlier. And this is the apartment layout. And I'll go through the different parts of the renovation, but just note here that we have a main large bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, a sitting and eating area here, and then this other room that is used as a combination office and bedroom. Can be used either way. So I'll move down into the next slide. So starting on the left, you'll see the original bathroom. And this was after the workers had knocked the walls down. You can see it was very rustic bathroom with just a small toilet and bathtub. And but they had to go in and just take the walls out to begin with. And they did also remove all this other fixtures. Here is a picture on the bottom left of the work in progress. And you can see the cement, all of this cement fill in. This is where they dug into the walls, into that tufa stone and put in the electrical and plumbing. These are plumbing pipes under here. And then here is the electrical wire. And this is the wire sticking out that later on would be where the light was attached. And then moving over through the pictures in the center, here are the new bathroom walls. So where they knocked these walls down, they built these new walls. And there's the opening for the door. And then here, this picture is after the door was actually put in. There's a brand new bathroom door. And then we have the new shower. So what you see here with the new shower doors is what what was here. There was nothing. And then here is the new sink and light. So here, this wire here is where they added the light that you see here. And then in Italy, it's really common to tile all of the walls. You see that nice tile that was tiled around the walls and into the shower. And I wanted to point out that the doors, the bathroom fixtures, and the tile, they were all made locally, right in the area of our town. This area has a lot of industry of fabricators making home building products, and especially ceramics, anything that's made of ceramic. Moving to the next slide, this is the kitchen. On the top left, this is what was there for the kitchen before. There wasn't much of a kitchen originally. There was a sink and something else. I can't remember what else was in there, but the wall had to be straightened out because these large tufa stone blocks, they were irregular and they were protruding into the room quite a bit. The wall wasn't straight. So you can see the tufa stone here. These green tubes are the new plumbing, and you can see that they had to also drill into the stone to make space for the pipes. And then on the bottom left, this is how that kitchen wall looked once the plastering was done. And also visible are the new electrical boxes. That plumbing that we looked at here, it's actually over to the side, so you can't see it, but they did have to plaster over that as well. And the right, or the center picture on the bottom, this shows how the kitchen looked once the tile was added. This bottom picture is the design from IKEA Roma, where we actually bought the kitchen. And then here is how the kitchen looked after it was installed. And one thing to think about when you do a restoration project like this, that the kitchen probably won't be included in the restoration project. The geometra just prepares everything to put the kitchen in, because you can see that all of that tile work was done and new flooring was put down. But you have to actually go to a kitchen store and buy a kitchen. So we went to IKEA and ordered everything. It was shipped to us in flat pack boxes, like you get all of your stuff from IKEA in. And then IKEA came out and installed it. The whole process for me of going to the IKEA in Rome was really stressful because I didn't know much Italian at the time. And that IKEA store is huge, it's always packed, but fortunately they do have kitchen designers there to do your design for you that speak English. And also IKEA Roma has a great bar for cappuccino, pastries, and tasty little sandwiches. So there was some saving grace there. But the way the kitchen turned out, we were really happy with it. Here's some other pictures of the construction while it was going on. And these two gentlemen did all of the work to reconstruct the walls and the floors and lay the tile. And there was an electrician and plumber who worked alongside with them who did that kind of work. On the bottom, I put this picture in because that circuit breaker box that they put in was just so modern in that very old building. So I just thought that was impressive. And then in the center, here's another work in process photo. It shows the apartment in full view from the back bedroom. You can see the bathroom here that we looked at earlier. There's those walls again. This door opening itself was really small. It was very low and not very wide. It had to be raised about 3 feet to make it up to code, up to the current building code. And then there's actually a metal bracket that they put in under the plaster to reinforce it to make it safe. And here you can see those 2.5 foot thick stone walls. So under all of this really nice smooth plastic are those big tufa stone blocks, very primitive looking blocks, and they really made it look nice and modern and clean. Here's a pile of the building material when it was all delivered. You can see all of the bricks and the materials to install the bricks here. This white square ceramic item is actually the shower floor pan. And then the bottom right, this is from the front bedroom looking out back into the center room. And this door also had to be raised and widened, and the wire hanging down is the electrical work in progress as the electricity was being added to the room. Here as well, you can see some new electrical outlet boxes because the electrical had been installed underneath it. The next room is the main larger bedroom. And this is the front bedroom. And in the center picture, this is the picture we saw in the last slide, looking from this bedroom into the center room. And then this picture is if you turned around and looked in the opposite direction, you can see the some of the where they had dug into the routed into the walls and floors to put in the new wiring. And these are the old tile floors that you see here, but those were completely covered up. And this is the new flooring, but before they had actually cleaned it. So they had just grouted it in this picture, and that's why it looks like that. Over to the right is the finally finished room. So you see this really nice plank ceramic tile, the completely replastered walls and painted, and the light fixture that was added. Just you can see the dramatic difference from the original room to what it looks like today. And a few more pictures. These are other pictures of the apartment after the furniture was put in. So on the left, we have the new front door into the apartment. The other door that you see right out there outside of it is the original door, and it goes up into the second floor. And this section of the building, we still need to renovate that, so that hasn't been touched at all. But you can see this very old door, how short and low it was. So this door was pretty similar to that when we first got the property. And this door will also have to be raised and widened to make it up to code. On the bottom center, this is another view of the back room. That we have a desk in there, and there's also in that same room, a different view of that same room, you can see that there's a couch in there as well that turns into a bed. This picture here is just the table set with some of the local food that was purchased at the grocery stores right outside the front door. So that covers the restoration project. So the next set of slides I wanted to walk through the area of Northern Lazio, the province of Viterbo and surrounding, to show you what there is to see and do. So I put this following slides together to give you an idea. I've been coming to this area of Italy every summer for the last more than 10 years, and every time I find so many new and unexpected surprises. The location in the center of Italy provides easy access to Rome, Tuscany, Umbria, and Abruzzo destinations, and also has a really long coastline, so you can also get to the coast. So with that, I'll go into some of the pictures that I have. Looking at the town of Galeazzi a little bit more, here is that Ducal Palace again. This is a picture from a postcard from the early 1900s. And you can see, I had mentioned before that this palace was actually a fortress at one time. The family of the Altemps in the 1500s actually turned it into a palace. So you can see the original fortress on the bottom and then the top of the palace structure that was built inside. This picture was taken inside of the palace, inside the palace courtyard. And in this photo, we see the townspeople and they're wearing the traditional costumes from the Renaissance time. And they do a play in the courtyard about an event that actually took place in the palace in the 1500s. So in our town of Galeazzi and all of the surrounding towns, it's really common to have these historic festivals and pageants. So you experience a real living history. of the area. And these events take place throughout the year. On the right side is the inside of an early Christian church. This is that church that we saw in the panoramic view, San Damiano's church. He was the patron saint of the town, or he is, and he is still. It was originally built in the 1200s, so beautiful example of a well-preserved early Christian church. Moving into the next slide, these are some city scenes of Gallese. Here's the Ducal Palace again, taken from the countryside. And then you see the Sibillini Mountains off in the distance looking toward Umbria. On the bottom left, there is a photo of the tables in the pizzeria in the central piazza, just outside our front door. Our front door is just right here, so a couple steps away. On the center bottom, here's another street scene of the town, and you can see some medieval arches and the walls made of travertine and tufa stone. Here's another example of some walls where they haven't actually plastered over them yet, so you can see the original stone. On the right bottom, we have zucchini flowers and melon for sale in a neighborhood grocery store. Zucchini flower dishes are very common in this area. On the top is one of the other churches in Gallese beside the large cathedral and besides the San Damiano church. And this church has origins going back to 800 AD. So there's actually some frescoes from the 800s that are pretty amazing in this church as well. In the middle, this is a photo of our, taken out from our kitchen window looking down at the piazza below. And the umbrellas that you see here are actually the same ones that you see in this photo here on the bottom left. Next, we have festivals and traditions. So on the top left, this is a photo of the festival of San Damiano, again, the patron saint of the town. And the men of the town carry the statue of the patron saint through the town. Every town in Italy would have a similar festival. This festival runs for a whole week in August, and the actual procession of the saint occurs on August 8th every year in honor of the patron saint. On the bottom left, this is a drum group of the young people in the town. And here they're actually performing at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And many of the towns in this area have these same type of drum groups, and they participate in the local festivals. The music that they play, the drum music and the formations that they do is pretty impressive to watch them. The center picture, this was taken in Rome. And here are all the townspeople. They are participating in this festival called the Infiorata, which takes place in the spring. It takes place throughout Italy, where the streets are decorated with designs that are made of petal flowers or flower petals and other types of natural material. On the right is a bagpipe group playing in the town during one of the festivals in the town. So this is what an Italian bagpipe looks like. On the top center is a Baroque dance group performing in the cultural center during a weekend-long music festival. This area of Italy had many Baroque composers, so these types of festivals take place throughout the year. The next thing I wanted to look at was the city of Viterbo. So this is the seat of the province, and here are some scenes of the city. And the historic center is surrounded by a completely intact medieval wall. And the city was the seat of the papacy in the 1200s, and here is the papal palace that's still standing. And there are some wonderful hot springs and vibrant art, music, and cultural scene here in Viterbo as well. And one thing to know about Viterbo is it's used as the backdrop for many movies and scenes, even today, where they say they're in Rome and Florence, but they're actually in Viterbo. It's a very picturesque city. Here's some things to see around Viterbo. The first one is a view of the Roman aqueduct along the Roman roads. And then here I am standing in front of one of the pools of the natural spring water in the town of Orte. Another one of the towns nearby, Soriano nel Cimino, with an Orsini castle posing above it. Ruins of a town that is an open air museum. It's like Bagnoregio, which a lot of people have heard of, but it's a different location with less people. And it's a historical open air museum. And then Parco Volchi, which is a park with the ruins of an Etruscan city and an excellent example of an Etruscan villa in the park as well. And then we have Otricoli, which is a city, a Roman city that was a major port city along the Tiber River. And here I'm on an excursion with archaeologists, and you can see all the people that joined. It's really common to have these kind of excursions where you go out into these historical areas with the guide, and it's really a great experience. Here is the Tiber River below. And then on the top, these top two pictures is the same location. It's also in Otricoli, but it shows a festival where actors dress up like the Romans of the time, and they occupy the site for a few days. They host a few shows and demonstrations and reenact the Roman life as it was when the port was still functioning during the time of the Roman Empire. Here's another trek that I went on with the local guide, and this young man, Luca, he runs a tourist agency where he takes people out in these historic areas. And this time we're actually on a private property. This is the owner of the property who owns this farm. And we were able to go on the farm and see some tombs that were actually originally from about 3,000 years ago, and also this castle. So it's really great to go out with these groups and hear the local history from the local guides. It's a really common form of entertainment there. So I really appreciate that. And this farm is a biological farm where they raise and produce olive oil, wine, hazelnut products, cheese, and beef. And they also grow the feed for the animals and run an agriturismo on the property, which is like a bed and breakfast with rooms for guests. So this is one of those farms that is part of that bio district that I mentioned earlier, where they're trying to raise purely organic and using heritage varieties of plants and animals. Here is an example of another castle that's in the area. You can see on the outside, it doesn't look that interesting, but once you got inside, the rooms were spectacular. This was also run by a guide that specializes more in the historical properties. And all of these tours and excursions that I'm talking about, they're really inexpensive. They're usually 10 to 15 euros per person. They last about half a day, and the guides are excellent. They have to pass an exam to be a guide in Italy in order to be able to give tours. So you get some great, get to see some great things and some great tours. This is actually a private residence, and you can only go in with the guide on the weekend. Here are some other castles in the area. These are each in a different town in the area within 10 or 15 minutes from our house. And these, you have here the Castello Ruspoli, the Villa Lante, and the Palazzo Farnese. And I have some photos of the inside on the next page. So the original Italian gardens with these shaped hedges, they originated in this area. And so each of these properties has excellent example of those type of Italian gardens. And then on the bottom is the remains of the palace of the infamous Lucrezia Borgia. And the castle is in ruins right now, but they still use the area for theater production. So this was a local theater group doing a play there that evening. And then the music scene. So there's a wide variety of music in this area because there were so many composers from the Baroque and Renaissance time that they still perform their music. So the settings would be in a really beautiful palazzo and churches in various towns throughout the area. And these concerts are either free or about 10 euros a person, so you can hear some great music for very little cost. These two photos are taken inside that Palazzo Farnese that I mentioned earlier, the one that's shaped like a pentagon. So this was performing an opera. This is a Baroque orchestra playing. And then here we're inside a church in Viterbo with a person that was able to play a Baroque guitar. That was a solo concert of a Baroque guitar. And here is a Baroque orchestra with an opera singer, again in a church in Viterbo. And here's actually the local Gallese concert band that was playing in a Baroque concert in the church. And then lastly, it wouldn't be a presentation about Italy without some pictures of food. So here we have the local food. So there's excellent produce that grows in the area. The cheese and gelato are actually made on premise at the dairy. So here's some photos of that. And then this is the appetizer plate from the pizzeria that is just down the street from us. Here are the offerings of the local bakery, bread and sweets and cookies, and a picture of the famous dish from this area, the porcini mushrooms and the egg pasta. This is a roasted cini, which is a very popular dish in the area, which is skewered pieces of lamb that's been barbecued. And then a pistachio tiramisu. So, and then also some of the things that I've talked about, I do have some information about them on this slide, some references, and I know you can't possibly write them all down right now, but they'll be sent out with the recording of the presentation. So I have some travel resources for you, and then some of the links to those touring groups that I had mentioned that you can follow and sign up for their newsletters and see what's going on in the area. So with that, Tonya, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you for the Q&A.
Yeah, so a lot of questions are streaming in. So I'll start with the first one. Was it frustrating to deal with so many contractors? And it's a two-part. Was the commune easy to deal with?
So fortunately, the geometra really handled all of that interaction. And he actually selected the contractors, got their bids, and oversaw their work. And he also submitted all the paperwork to the Comune and then made sure that the Comune came and did the inspections for signing off on the permit. During the work, one of the things that happened is the electrician, actually, the geometra wasn't happy with the work that the electrician did or the way that he put in the electrical wiring. So he actually made him take it all out and redo it. So it was, yeah, so he was a really good geometra and made sure that by the time it was all done, we were happy with it. So, and the project was done in 2015. So it's now been almost about 6 years or so. And we really haven't had any problems with the work that was done by these professional subcontractors.
Wow, that's great. How long did it take to complete the renovation? How much did it cost, ballpark?
Yeah.
And then this goes into a question about, did you speak fluent Italian? And you touched on that with IKEA.
Yeah, so it took about 3 months to do that apartment that we looked at, which is on the second level. And then we went back and we did the ground floor, the Magazzino, and we also did some work in the ingresso, which I didn't show, which is behind this front door. And then later on, we redid the plaster on the front of the house. So I think that was in 2016, kind of strung out a little bit, but the original apartment was done after about 3 months, so it was pretty fast. And then the Italian was a problem at that time because I really hadn't studied Italian up to that point. But the geometra, he had a really good friend who was an Italian, but she taught English. So when we really got stuck, she would come along with him, and we're really fortunate because she wouldn't accept any payment for helping us. If I think we had to hire a translator, would have gotten pretty expensive. And as far as the cost, it kind of averaged out to about 1,000 euros per square meter. And I don't want to say the total cost, but I just have heard other people that did a renovation talking about that. So a square meter is about 11 square feet, and 1,000 euros is about it's about $1,200. So it's not cheap, but the property in this area is very inexpensive. Like you could buy an apartment for $25,000 to $50,000. So if you spent $100,000 renovating it, you'd still be okay. Or you still have a pretty inexpensive home.
Right, yeah. So then there's just a compliment. The house looks beautiful. You should be so proud. And it does. Why were the original doors so short? Another question.
It just goes back to the original way that the building was built, because it was built in the 1500s, and the people were small. And a lot of these, you have to imagine that if you look at a medieval town, that a lot of the walls were actually open and they went up to the different levels by ladders. So it's just really hard to imagine how the building got to how it looks today over the last 500 years. So they were really trying to keep from having big doors to preserve the heat inside, and then the people just weren't very tall. So.
Yeah, there's a question about, my understanding is that subcontractors do not adhere to a strict timeline. Was this your experience?
I think they really did pretty well. Part of the problem is, like, when they went in, they did find some surprises that it stretched it out a bit. I was saying that it took them 3 months to do that apartment, but really 2 of the weeks of those 3 months, they were on vacation because it was in August. So it actually took them a little bit less than 3 months. And we had a different contractor do the face of the house, that nice plaster that you see there. And they were pretty good as well. I think they finished it when they said they would. And then a different subcontractor who we just worked with directly was the heating and air conditioner person. And he stayed on schedule and showed up when he said he would as well. We really hadn't had the experiences that you hear about. I think what you hear about are the bad experiences, but not so much people that had a good experience don't go out and complain. So
yeah, that's great. Someone's asking if the tufa stone is a hard volcanic stone.
It's pretty porous, actually, and it's real easy to dig into, but it's strong as well. It's volcanic, but it's not hard. I wouldn't say it's hard. Pretty soft and porous.
Yeah, and then the next question is there a seismic code for the renovation like yours?
So when you go into a house and you do renovation, the Comune has some seismic requirements, and they'll review the permit that the geometra submits at the time. And the architect, so each town has an architect that will look at the design and propose anything that needs to be done to make sure that the building is seismically safe. So when I mentioned in that one door that we had to widen, that's why they had to put in a steel bracket underneath it, was to make sure that after they removed the stone that they hadn't caused the building to weaken at all.
Okay, yeah. So they do account for the seismic.
Yeah, when you do the permit,
yeah.
when you do the permitting, they'll review that. The architect will review it.
And then another compliment from Michaela: the pictures are so beautiful and your presentation so impressive. People are very complimentary.
Oh, thank you.
This question, yeah, was it all worth it and would you do it again?
You know, it was worth it, and it's been really wonderful having a home in Italy, and I'm so happy that that has happened in my life. But one thing I think for us to be able to, you know, keep this home in the family was really great, because we do have a lot of family there. So when we go, it's so much fun to be there and experience everything. But I think if I was just coming to Italy and buying a property, I think I would really look at a town more like Viterbo and just go buy something that someone had already renovated. Because if you really look at when you renovate something in Italy, you might put $100,000 into the renovation, but you might only get half of that back when you actually, if you actually did sell it. So if you go buy something that someone already renovated, you're taking advantage of their loss. And also you can be in a bigger city where there's maybe more happening on a daily basis. So if you didn't have that family connection and you're moving into a place where you don't really know people, being in a slightly larger town where more is happening would probably be a better situation. But I am really happy that we were able to keep this property in the family.
Yeah, that's really special. So I just want to mention that it's 8 o'clock, and I want to tell everybody that there are some more questions. Natalie and I chatted before the presentation, and we will download these and she can answer them in the follow-up email. So yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that. And thank you all for being here. It was really a super awesome presentation, Natalie. And I was going to turn it back over to you for just closing comments.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Tanya. And thanks everyone again for joining. I'm glad that we had so many people coming. So the event recording, we're going to send that out to everyone that signed up for the event, even those who weren't able to make it. We'll send that out by email. It'll be loaded on YouTube, and we'll provide the link for that. And then we'll also include the reference links about the area that I was showing you on the last page of the presentation. And as a reminder, we have our March event coming up on March 8th, and Julie Brown will do a presentation on how to claim your Italian citizenship. And then you can sign up on that event on Eventbrite. It's already listed out there under Italian Portland. And you can follow Italian Portland on Eventbrite and on Facebook for more information and updates on future events. Our next newsletter will be coming out in mid-February with announcements of future events. And I wanted to thank you all for joining. We're going to stop the recording now, and we'll also be closing the Zoom call, and we hope to see you all at our next event.